I want to talk a little bit about what land trusts are. Most of you probably know a lot of this, but some of you won't. And the most, I get repeatedly asked, anyway, what exactly does a land trust do? And I'm sure every group of the GBRS, of the GB5 gets asked that kind of question about what they do. Our land trust, we scientifically identify ecologically important lands. That's our basic knitting, and we do that through many mechanisms that I'll get into later on in this talk. So this is you've seen this photo earlier from Carl. This is Sandy Island and Ingersoll Island. They're basically attached. This is a 500-acre piece of habitat that the land trust is protected. And so we protect lands on Georgian Bay through two vehicles: ownership, direct ownership by the land trust, or through conservation agreements. And the conservation agreement tool is something that we will be accelerating with as a procurement tool going forward. Once we receive these lands or do an easement on them, we steward them, and we steward them in perpetuity. And what does that mean? That means doing inventories on these lands at baseline and repeating those inventories at least every 5 years. So we're inventorying the habitat, we're protecting the habitat, we're inventorying flora and fauna, and we're taking action where we have invasive species or other negative impacts on the ecology of these lands. We're protecting lands. Our most southerly properties are in Port Severn, the Port Severn wetlands, and our properties extend actually into the North Channel just east of Bland River. We're presently protecting or stewarding close to 6,000 acres on this coast, and our area outlined in red here also extends, as I said, into the North Channel, but it extends out into the water and extends to the Trans-Canada Highway. So our catchment area really is covering the whole near shore watershed, not all of the watershed, and out into the islands offshore, which are important for colonial water birds and other important migration routes. So a little bit about the science behind what we do. We have a natural conservation plan. This was started in 2005. It was preceded by work with Wendy Cooper in the Eastern Georgian Bay Coastal Project, where an awful lot of inventory work was done on this special coast to inventorying the flora and fauna. We updated that work with additional layers from bodies such as the Canadian Wildlife Service, MNR, and we use all of these data layers to look at Georgian Bay and its watershed and prioritize the important ecological spaces on our shore. So this is just an example. This is island biodiversity in the Point of Burrell and Bayfield area. You can see up in the Bayfield area, there's still lots of untouched habitat there where biodiversity is still thriving. We're actually saving 2 islands up in that area this year. We've basically, through this process, we have scored the ecological importance of the entire biosphere and part of the North Channel. This is just another example of old growth forest priority criteria scoring. The red, of course, is the highest tier, and the purple is the lowest tier. So we sort of rated all the sort of ecological functions on Georgian Bay. We're going to be updating this plan as we go forward and incorporating some other aspects into it. Our natural area conservation plan through this work identified 20,000 acres of private lands that are important to be preserved, and that's through their ecological assessment. And that shouldn't be surprising to a lot of us, because this coast is the richest biodiversity of reptiles and amphibians in Canada. It beats the West Coast, it beats the East Coast. Additionally, the lands that we preserve, most of them, go through the Ecological Gifts Program, and there is a strict review process by them, and they have to meet a very high standard, high bar, in order to qualify in that Ecological Gifts Program. So most of our properties, they go through our internal review process, and then they're reviewed by Environment Canada. And if they meet that test, then they come into our fold. Just a word about stewarding these properties in perpetuity. We have over 100 volunteers up and down the coast, and it's with that kind of number of bodies that you can look after these vast spaces that we do. So I think I touched on that, but we're over 25 years, we've grown to protect over 6,000 acres on the coast, and we intend to accelerate that going forward. Conservation is a choice, and conservation of private lands is a choice of the private landowner. You can't be top down on it, we've learned that. But the Land Trust provides an opportunity through conservation agreements, especially, to protect open spaces and wilderness places. And the Government of Canada, through its Ecological Gifts program, recognizes the importance of that. So I hope by now you've got a little bit better idea than these ladies sitting here about what some of the conservation tools are. It's not something that's going to come running through your living room. We also protect important community lands. I think in most of the communities, excepting unfortunately Honey Harbor, and I don't know whether we can do something with that, Peter Cook's here, but we'll work on it. We have community lands that people enjoy. These are just recreational places where people can let their hair down, picnic, and enjoy nature. I think this is why most of us go there. There are other properties we have, like Sandy Island, with trails on it, where you can go and see more rich biodiversity. But for a lot of us, this is what we appreciate. So the Land Trust is protecting these kinds of lands in your communities. We're also partnered with the GBBR, and the GBBR really is the leader in education on this coast, and they're helping us out with our coastal education programs, inspiring the next generation of conservationists. I think this is really important with the younger generation to interact with nature and understand, its importance. I think that, the guy here has sort of got a grasp on how you can interact with nature, and maybe in a nice way. We also are using our lands as a base. We're spanning from Port Severn into the North Channel, and we're starting to use our lands as an array, rather than just sort of single scientific projects on one property. We're building that out, and our first project, which will start and launch in 2017, is to help migratory birds that are in decline. We don't understand why. And there's new remote telemetry, which can scan for a 15-kilometer radius on banded birds. This is a program that was started by Dr. Chris Guglielmo and his wife at the University of Western Ontario, and some other colleagues from Acadia. And they're now monitoring in north-central South America, the northern end. There are stations there and banding occurring here, and they're actually tracking the flight of migratory birds up the coast, up through the central United States. But there's nothing north of here on Georgian Bay or Lake Superior until you get to James Bay. So we are starting with an array at the southern end of Georgian Bay in April of next year, and we hope to expand that up into the North Channel. So that's an example how we can use this biosphere in new technology to get a handle on why species are declining and how we can help them. Just a couple of things, projects we did in 2016. This is McKenzie Island, Point of Brill, 35 acres. It has one of the last remaining stands of old growth white pine on it. We saved that this year. That's one of the trees from the interior of that island. It has such great habitat. That's a photo of a fawn nursing on McKenzie Island. Another property saved there was near O'Donnell Point in the south of 12 Mile Bay. It was awarded distinction by Environment Canada and Climate Change as one of 4 properties in Ontario for saving biodiversity. It was held out as an example of biodiversity preservation. So going forward, what are we going to do? We are going to build out our natural conservation plan. We are going to be putting in mapping connected corridors and trying to build out those corridors between parks and private lands, for example, corridors that connect to shoreline. I think shoreline connectivity, we don't talk about that very much, but I was at an international meeting in Minneapolis, and we got into that discussion quite heavily about, well, it's equally important to get connectivity, you know, in the littoral zone and just on land masses. So looking forward, I think this is a wonderful meeting, and I think that it's good to plan, and we have some ideas around what we can do to plan for the future, so we aren't left like these two poor guys when the boat leaves between a rock and a tree. Thank you.